Morning, fellow zombies. Are you alive yet? Are you awake yet? Are you emotionally screwed up and sleep deprived? Because, yeah, I'm all of those. I thought this was a freaking joke yesterday when I heard about it again. I'm like, again? Different location for a campus, but again? Oh, good lord. Who am I? I am the Weaver John C. of Roseman, California, who's got a issue. And I suppose I better be addressing this to all the campuses that I've gone to, and hopefully going back over to the fall. Because I'll be calling over there to look for stability. Sorry about that, Dr. Zeller. I hope Antelope Valley College is still going and still continuing to have trouble-free issues like the ones we have been facing over half a year in regards to the protesting situations. I'm coming back in the fall. I'm coming back in the fall. Continue my studies and maybe next next year graduate. And I'll be graduating with a heavy heart. I've made Antelope Valley my home. Well, all the things I had gone through for the past nearly decade, I had kind of depended upon Antelope Valley as structure and support. And an educational icon in an Alexandria that hopefully will not disappear in time. All the things that are happening and challenging our democracy and our way of life and our understanding about things. It's getting harder and harder to not have opinions expressed as much as some of those opinions may be or may not be valid. But it still disturbs me, nevertheless. We're supposed to have opinions, aren't we? We're supposed to be having discussions among ourselves as fellow academians. We're challenging ourselves to new horizons, according to what we've been telling ourselves are crazy. But what I've been seeing more and more of ourselves is it's getting uglier and uglier. Our own human behavior, our own code of ethics, our own standards have been pushed to the max at this point over here, where extremism has to take center stage. No longer are there debates. We must deface and clutter up and destroy property because we have an opinion, and that has to be mattering more and more these days. We must be showing just how rotten we are towards each other. We cannot do a debate on a stage. We must debate in public with graffiti, with broken glass, with cluttered materials all over the place, by trapping employees, administrations in their offices and cubicles. Yeah, I'm referring to Calisdale, Los Angeles. It seems that civilization as we knew it, or as we had an idea of it, is being stretched worse than stretching silly putty. It's stretching ultra thin and to a breaking point. I've seen some of those students, if you can call them students, decided they're just going to snap anyway. and take it out on who and whatever it is. They wanted to make a message about divestiture. They wanted to make sure that the college system isn't taking their money and paying for war in another country. Therefore, they must get their message known. Yes, it is their responsibility of doing so, but the damage of campuses, terrorizing people. Sometimes I think a student in his right mind, or her, they're in their right mind, would not go so crazy. But again, I have to go back through history on this one. Dr. Zeller, have you ever done U.S. studies regarding the 1960s? There's several colleagues of yours out there who would go over this information with you in the history department in political science and have a discussion concerning about student activism back in the 60s compared to now, or student activism between 1960s through now. I suppose there could be a massive essay written on this one, or a massive speech. I'm surprised Professor Venta would have a contest made for this one here. How constitutional is it when freedom of speech is stretched too thin like silly putty? How much of it can snap and not be recognized? Just how far can we go with our speech? Just how far can we go with our point trying to make it across before we make things snap? Yeah, I'm worried about my campus. I call it my home. I've been going there for almost a decade, in 2 classes at a time, mostly. I mean, if you actually looked at my academic career over there, Professor, I haven't been involved with any of the student activities, no clubs, just classes trying to get through. So my resume is going to be as bland as vanilla ice cream. But I prefer Neapolitan myself. And there's a reason why I mentioned that. LA people don't get it when you're looking at it in a certain point of view. And what happens when you melt the Neapolitan ice cream with its flavors of chocolate and vanilla and strawberry? You can't recognize it, can you? Much like our viewpoints and our ideas and ideologies and idealisms of what our country and our viewpoints are supposed to be. You ever looked at a thick pot of stew before? Beef stew? A lot of people have different recipes for it, don't they? But keep an idea of it in your mind if you can, Professor. I'm sorry. Slip of the tongue, Doctor. But I feel like I'm dealing with my college professors out there. Anyway, so a stew is got all sorts of ingredients, but it's held together by a glue, isn't it? By the sauce. We have the ingredients in it. Throw in a bunch of ingredients. Even chicken stew would do the same thing, different colored, but it's still the glue. The sauce is the glue. We have our differences. We have our things to make the stew enhanced, don't we? The different flavors, but it's all covered up by the same flavor, the broth, thickened roux. You have have to look at it. We still want to look at America in a different point of view. They had called us the Great American Melting Pot. We had differences left and right, but there was a glue, a roux, a broth, a thickened liquid to hold us together. That was the idealism. That was what I was taught by. What I tried to understood. I was trying to understand it, trying to comprehend it. I may be comprehending a lot less these days because I don't understand the anger and hatred we have. I don't understand it at all. We have a lot of people out here who are desperate and trying to get their point of view across. Now, I can try understanding the students' frustration. I can try understanding your frustration of not getting a message across and think their message has not been heard. Trust me, I've heard. But going to extreme methods, I guess in a way, is one way of trying to get our attention, but at a cost to them and to us. I'm not thumping the chest. I'm not thumping the chest of saying my side is right and your side is wrong. But I'm going to break your comfort, your strength, your support, your Alexandria, in order to prove my point that I'm right and you're wrong. If discussions are failing, if discussions among the campus presidents, trustees, if they have broken down, I'm wondering what else choice do the students have in order to prove their point. If I happen to say the L word, would it happen to freak you out a bit, Doctor? Because if the students actually thought of that, pooling resources, whatever they have, to promote a case, either a class action or even one unified case of sorts. I mean, that would be one way of legally trying to get your attention, by spending valuable resources to get a point across. A way of trying not to destroy or disrupt campus life. But what choices would they have except to barricade themselves? We taught our students well throughout our lifetimes as adults, growing up and telling our kids what happened back in the 60s and then decades after that, and what they went through back then, what they experienced, what was the consequences of it too. I don't agree what's happening with our country trying to supply weapons for genocides. I don't agree with it. I sure as hell don't like Hamas doing what they did either. Insinuated, insulated, integrated themselves. And that society had made them part of theirs, either as a voice or not realizing that even with dangerous ideas trying to get people's world's attention. Was that the best way? And then seeing all chaos ran loose. And our own government position here, Reverend. Sorry. I talk to a lot of people. Forgive me, Doctor. I'm trying to understand chaos and confusion right now, but there is no way of understanding the patterns. All of it random. Not following rules. Not following regulations. Not following normal course patterns. And either we have gotten too old and set in our ways and we cannot adapt to it, or have we drawn lines, Professor? Have we drawn lines to say no to it all? And then we have to deal with a chaotic flood. It makes one contemplate a lot more than my own personal issues. My own personal issues I have regarding this is I'm seeing campuses that I've gone accustomed to throughout my lifetime. I'm a Southern California native. Born Downey, raised in San Fernando Valley, moved out here with my family, God rest her soul. Their resting place still stays there. My mother and my big brother. The times when I have taken a semester or two or off, one has to take care of one's health, mental and physical. And this time I'm dealing with another caretaking assignment. It puts a heck of a lot of strain on a person, every which way. But I persist. I owed it to Ma and Dave. Ma passed away in 2013. Dave passed in 2018. And during that time, before Big Brother had passed away, I was going to college. And believe it or not, I was getting my footing. I was understanding more and more. And for an old fart, I'm only 58 right now, but what the hell? I've learned a lot. I've admired a great deal of professors over there. I thank them for their teachings, their education, their wisdom, making me to understand and learn things about myself and how I view the world differently than I had growing up. We didn't have that back then. But these days, sometimes education is a two-bladed sword. One blade to cut you, the other one stab the other guy. And it's a violent expression to use. Usually I would say a double-edged sword. Well, two-bladed. You get the blades on both sides of the thing. While you're trying to educate the other person, you're also not trying to educate yourself in pain as well, and understanding the other guy's pain. A double-edged sword will be a hell of a metaphor, and not one used unless there's I hate to use that terminology, point to be made, an example to be set. But I am not advocating violence. I'm not. You know, it's a dumb metaphor to use in the first place. But it seems like we're getting in that one. We're using that. We're not using a Roman short sword. No. Basically, we had our own blades forged We thought we had the handle and hilt covering one end, but the other, while the other exposed, was going to be making the metaphorical points taken. That's a rotten metaphor. Because we're also bleeding from our own stupidity, our own ignorance, our own arrogance, our own indifference, our own injustice, our own pain from it all that we're learning. As I said before, it sucks using these kind of metaphors because I'm seeing it more and more. A student trying to yell and scream and hoot and holler in as much volume as a person could use, the loudest voice still doesn't get is overwhelmed, overrun, and deafened by everybody else. What else is there but physical, which gets more of the attention, but hurts more people in the process, including themselves? But I suppose if one's going to have to make a point, a point that hurts everybody else in the process, that's what it does. And it sucks. And you know what gets to me at this point, Doctor? They never take accountability, transparency, or be responsible. They will blame for the actions they've done. They are responding to it in a knee-jerk fashion, or a mosquito. You dealt with mosquitoes before, haven't you? Little tiny buggers suck the living blood out of you, but also leave this weird-ass enzyme in you that irritates your nerve endings. How many times you scratch it, it gets worse and worse. Till you use some kind of calming balm on it, and then you get rid of the pain and the itching. But the after effect is still there. The raised bump. Is that how we're looking at the whole situation for the student protesting? With sufficient enough mosquito bites, we are making progress as students to make our violent actions and reactions a point being made clear. But do they understand the cost down the road? Do they? As I get older in my life, I contemplate a lot more things than what I used to. As a young person, I looked forward to the future. Now it terrifies the hell out of me. I'm finding hiding from life is more pleasant than dealing with the cold, stark reality that we're living in right now. But I can tell you one thing on that one there, Doctor. It's a prison. I've been here. More ways than one. So, even us older folks have to go forward. More hesitant, more cautious, not as bold or encouraged as our youth are. If there was any vestige that the campus was making to indirectly be part of the problem, I would hope our student body would understand that tearing apart our beloved campus, not the answer. I would understand science being promoted. It would even be probably promoting something as stupid as this. Just to prove a political point. This is just a sign. This is a sign. One could run a sociology experiment on this one here, Doctor. If you're only teaching class, Doctor, I could call you a professor at this point and make you comfortable. But as an old fart, I'll probably be proving a point one way or another. Discussion. It's the only thing we got left. And it's the only thing that can whittle and chip away a stone as water does to minerals. Slowly but surely trying to be the great equalizer. You ever taken physical sciences, Doctor? Ever appreciated science? Appreciated nature and its wonder? It makes quite humbled. It makes a humbling thought, doesn't it? How things are equalized and kind of ruin that equilibrium. Watch chaos and confusion happen. As we are seeing it in our own lifetime. Try to embrace new ideas and try to embrace changes that might help and not become a detriment to us. And when do I look at myself when I see myself in the mirror? Oh, I sure as heck don't see myself as an old ancient wizard on the top of a mountain thinking he knows everything. Because the problem is he's so damn isolated from everywhere else that he's not part of the flow. Even a ragged, jagged piece of mineral conglomerate, sedimentary, given time, given constant attention by water, can find its own ragged edges smoothed. You might want to think about one thing there, Professor. Forgive me, Doctor. I still consider you a professor. Sometimes you have to look at things with a different perspective instead of analytical. A geologic formation, a common stone that you see on the ground, smooth and round, and what kind of stories would it tell you? Smoothed over by weathering. How much of our own static formation of knowledge and of wisdom, our own arrogance sometimes that we are right and everybody else is wrong. Just how much weathering and time will it take for us to become a smooth stone among the little cobble along the breccia? You ever walk down a railroad track? I have, many times. All the aggregate that you see along the ground. And they're different, aren't they? I've seen a lot of smooth stones. I've seen a lot of jagged edges. But given weathering and time, they become smooth cobblestones and maybe made into pathways. Some things to think about. I'm hoping before I graduate out of AB college that I will actually take a philosophy course that won't be challenging everything else I know and turning it into silly putty. There's always a snapping point. I should be taking the beginning on the philosophy course just to understand it more. There's a hunger and thirst out there that still needs to be sated but not quenched. There's also other ideas to come across, torn apart by critical thinking. But there's also goals out there to be made and journeys still left untouched. I'm not dead and dying yet. But should I happen to come across those who want to yell and scream and break things, my only mature response to them is, I'm seeing a toddler in a sandbox who doesn't like the toys around him and he's breaking things to make a point. Why doesn't he like them? Why doesn't he use them? Why doesn't he get along with anybody? I don't know. But even as I listen to what's happening with the students and their viewpoints, at some time they also have to understand that we're all in the same sandbox. We're all in it. We are either part of the sand that being shifted around or the toddler brains that are screaming and yelling their heads off because they don't know any better or lack direction and understanding and learning. It's just a thought. I'll be seeing you on campus pretty shortly, I hope, Doc. Maybe one of these here days we'll have a nice, long, deep philosophical discussion. And then I'll be wondering whether or not if I actually gone over the edge with the students, or actually am I going to be looking at them as a wise old sage just steadily shaking his head at the youth and not realizing they still don't know. They have a long road ahead of them. But even us old sages still need to learn a trick or two, don't we?